This guest needs no introduction, but on the off chance this is your first time hearing about this man, I'll try to do him some justice. He is a voice of our scene through generations. You can spot him at virtually half of the top eights once they return, and if you go through history, one of my favorite commentators, players, and just people in the scene. I am super excited to have him on. Without further ado, we have Toph. Toph, thank you for being here.
What an intro. What's up, dude? Thank you so much. I appreciate that. What do I call you, JD?
Yeah, JD's fine.
Thank you, JD.
I'm definitely want to make sure it's clear. I'm not going to fanboy, and I don't think you deserve like K-pop status, but there's a little bit of like, you know, when I was joining, you were the guy on top, right? How do you, just to get it out of the way, because I know I already brought it up and we're in this whole little bit. How do you engage with that kind of dynamic of maybe people that you might see as peers, but because they've seen your content for so long, seen you on the microphone for so long, might put you on a pedestal of some sorts? Do you have a kind of relationship with that?
No, it's not. I don't know, man. I don't think of myself that way. And, no, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm streaming every day now, so I'm talking to, you know, people in my chat all the time, and you know, I just try to engage with them where they're at, kind of thing, you know, like, I try to, I like, one of the vibes that I want to kind of always put across is like, I want to be seen as relatable. I want to be seen as like, because that's how it started for me. I mean, I was a fanboy of Homemade Waffles and Phil before me, you know, and then I became buds with them. So just, you know, it's just the cycle of life, you know. In all of life, there's a rhythm. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big thing, at least in our community. It's like you go to your first major and you're like, oh my God, that's the 70th best player in the world. And you're, you're just like thrown into the wolves in that sense. I know I was. Right. And it's just a funny thing to like kind of get in. And then you, as you get better, you earn their respect. It's a whole thing that, frankly, I don't want to spend too much time on, but as, you know, someone who has, you know, engages it with myself, it's just an interesting little dynamic, but we'll brush past that. You mentioned kind of when you were coming up, your Homemade Waffles, Phil, those were the guys. What was your first tournament? Do you remember it?
Well, my first tournament of all time, like my first tournament ever was like a Brawl tournament on the University of Washington campus. I actually beat Vish at that tournament. We played Brawl.
Oh shit!
I played him Toon Link versus Captain Falcon. He tried to use melee. He tried to use melee knowledge. Unfortunately, you can't play Melee Falcon in Brawl. That is a fucking bottom tier character. So
facts.
That was my actual first tournament, and then you know, actually from that tournament I kind of linked up with Vish and the other University of Washington Melee folks, and then we started going to locals. And so my first tournament was some local at a game store called Game Clucks in Seattle. And then my first like not major, but I guess it would have been a regional was we drove, me and Silent Wolf and Eggs and my other friend Matt from college. We drove like 15 hours. I've told this story a couple times, but we drove like 15 hours through a blizzard to Alberta, Canada from Seattle. And
oh my God!
Called Cast 4. Yeah, and that would have been in like 2008. That would have been in 2000. Yeah, because I started playing 2008. So
holy shit!
That was my first out of state tournament. Yeah,
and worth it.
Oh yeah, it was super fun. I mean, we almost died. Like we hit an ice patch on the road, and the car did a 360. I was driving, and then my friend Matt neglected to tell me that, you know, the car actually did a 4-wheel drive. I just had to push a button to turn it on. So good of him to, you know. But no, super worth it. It was crazy. Like I was so poor at that point. I had less than $20 to my name. I bought a bunch of hot dogs at Safeway, and I brought them up in a cooler because I didn't have the money to spend on, you know, Subway or going out or anything like that. So I just brought up a cooler full of hot dogs, and that was everything I ate that weekend.
Holy shit, that's some real that's some real smasher status right there.
Yeah,
that's some going through the gauntlet.
Right. Well, money matches in those days were very real because for me, if you did $5 money match, that's half of your net worth. So
word, yeah, you got to survive off those games. Word.
Right.
Okay, so 2008. I mean, I'm not going to go into the historical where Melee was. Clearly, it was not as successful of a time. Mm-hmm. How did you stay involved? I'm sure there were infrequent tournaments, but how often were they? How bad was it?
There were monthlies. I don't think weeklies were as much of a concept back then. So there were monthlies, and there were 20, 30 people. Like 30 would be a really good monthly. So it'd be in like the teens or the 20s. And I mean, it was the kind of thing where like, a lot of it back then was like, because this was like the dark ages. This was when Brawl was clearly the much bigger game, and so like there were some of the Melee heads were trying to get into Brawl as a way to kind of make friends with the Brawl community and maybe make them have a reason to give Melee a chance, kind of thing. So that was kind of a thing back then. And then for me, it was like a lot of it was anytime there was like anyone who showed any interest at all, like as one of the. I mean, we were all scene leaders at that because the scene is so small. Every single person who's invested in it is a scene leader. So like, anytime anyone would show any interest that was a new player, like we would personally invite them over and like make them feel welcome and try to make sure they stuck around because like one person was a big deal. That was a big that's a lot of growth for a 20, 30 person scene. And so I remember there was this dude Jeffrey who I met at the University of Washington, and we played. I went to his dorm, and I played with him, and he started going to tournaments. And then many years later, he moved to SoCal after he graduated, and he actually joined Team Oxy. And he was working with Blur and Squid and them on Team Oxy for a while. And so I was always kind of happy that like that was an example of like one random dude that like joined our Facebook group. He goes by "Geez, I'm so bored." That's his tag. I don't know if he's with Oxy anymore, but he, you can see him in Twitch chats from time to time. And that was like one person that like ended up kind of sticking with it, and then he actually was hosting tournaments and doing stuff with Team Oxy. So I was kind of like, okay, well that's cool. Clearly, I'm happy that I kind of reached out to that guy and got him to stick around.
Right. So it's kind of you when someone comes in, you put all the attention on them.
Yeah. No, you do.
Yeah.
You make them feel like they're in the inner circle, so that they feel like they want to stick around.
Awesome.
And we don't have the resources to do that now because there's so many new players.
Sure.
We're not fucking reaching out to every single. It's just a different scene now.
Right.
But back then, that was just kind of how it was. We were so tight knit because there really weren't that many of us.
Right. And so I mean, clearly it made a difference because when everything started coming up, when I was introduced to it, which was when I was like, it was like 2011, 2012, when there were some viral clips going around, and because I played it as a kid, I was like, oh, this Melee thing is super sick. And then obviously the doc, I'm interested, like being kind of on the inside through that process and getting involved and starting your commentary. Like what's your timeline? I guess your come up, you could say, through that era.
I commentated, I was friends with, I'll shout out all the people that kind of got me there. So Bobby Siege, who's now Coach Bobby CLG, he was deciding the commentary roster for Northwest Manifest, which was a tournament we were putting together in Seattle, and we were flying out PP, and then like Lovage and SFAT and West Balls and some of the Cali guys were coming up. So it was the first regional tournament we ever had in Seattle. We never put on a real proper regional, like semi-major tournament in Seattle. So that was the first one we ever did. And so there was a lot of hype for the Washington scene. We had all these kind of, foreign, not foreign, but, out of state, with a lot of out of state talent coming to Washington for the first time. And so Bobby Siege said, I know, Toph, I know you like to talk about the game. I'm going to put you on commentary. And I had a block with Scar, and it went pretty well. And then
your first commentary block, or did you get your
first commentary block with Scar?
Oh, wow.
First commentary block was Scar. I mean, I commentated locals and stuff like that.
Okay.
Right? But I mean, Scar that was the first time I met Scar practically. And me and Scar ended up commentating Northwest. So Northwest Manifest, and then the next year, 2013, we did NorCal Regionals together, top 8, and that was Sheridan, the Genesis head TO, who put us on for that. And since NorCal Regionals 2013 was on the road to Evo circuit, we had a really good block doing top 8 of that tournament. So we had a pools block at Evo that year. We didn't do top 8 that year. We didn't do top 8 2014. But then by 2015, Prague had kind of retired, and we were kind of like the next duo in line, pretty much. So we ended up getting the top 8 slot. And we'd been 2014, we did a lot of traveling. We were trying to get commentary gigs wherever we could take them. Juggle Guy helped put us on too, because there were a lot of big Juggle Guy tournaments, Big House 2 and Sweet, Super Sweet, and tournaments like that we were doing. So that was kind of our timeline. Was our first block ever was 2012, and that was Bobby Siege that actually put that together from CL, who works for CLG now. And then 2013, 2014, that was kind of our training arc where we were just kind of trying to commentate as much as possible.
Wow. And so would you guys, I mean, you guys traveled together, I'm assuming, almost all the time when you did travel. Did you kind of pitch yourself as a package deal? Was it always like, hey, we're coming in together, put us on a block as a duo?
Eventually. And not at first, at first it was just kind of happenstance. But then, we realized after doing NCR together, we actually have some, we weren't even very good friends back then. Like I wasn't, I didn't know Bobby until we commentated together before we were really friends. And then, then we started talking to each other and we were like, well, hey, we got some synergy. But we have some stuff to flesh out. We talk over each other a lot because we both have a lot to say. Mm-hmm. Let's figure stuff. And we actually started talking and kind of refining it. And we'd kind of have little postmortems, after every commentary, tournament we commentated, we'd kind of chat with each other and say, okay, how do you think that went? What can we do better? Blah, 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 blah. And before long, once we were I wouldn't say we were a package deal so much as we would just, I'd be like, yo, I'm kind of interested in going to this tournament. I hit him up and say, you trying to go to this tournament with me? I'm looking to go into this tournament. And it didn't work like that for every tournament. Like I went to Revival and Melee 6 and 7. He didn't go to those. I went to Rom 6 and Rom 7 actually with Daryl. We didn't commentate together, but we played. Both entered. And Bobby didn't go to those. So there were definitely tournaments that I went to that he didn't go to. And I think vice versa as well. But we would try to line it up,
Gotcha.
And then when we did, the TOs would usually try to they would want us on because they knew we had that pre-baked in synergy. And
so you would they kind of knew that, all right, put them together. It's like multiplication sort of deal. That's awesome. It makes a lot of sense too. I mean, I think having a training partner in anything, a lot of people don't think of commentary as something that you could have kind of a training partner with, but I'm sure you didn't have that relationship with everyone you commentated with, that you kind of were both in it like, okay, let's get better afterwards. Let's work on these things and have that knowledge base of what can we do better. I mean, has that changed? Do you have that relationship with anyone else now?
Not to the degree that I have it with Bobby, but I will canonically talk with, or canonically is the wrong word. I will candidly talk with, whoever I'm commentating. If they're down to hear it, I will talk with whoever I'm commentating with before and after and kind of make sure we're, in alignment, I guess, It really depends. I mean, at this point, usually if I'm commentating, I kind of usually know who I'm commentating with. It does depend. And then, the vibe is always different based on what tournament it is. Sure. Summit has a very different vibe than, because there's 4 people on the couch, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm usually talking less at Summit overall because there's more people, So there's all kinds of little, and a lot of it is the vibe, reading the room. A lot of it is like the every event feels different.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all super interesting to me. Another thing that's kind of in that area on, in the world of like coming up and getting your licks and all that is balancing your career as a player. As many people know, after the infamous slime tournament, we could timestamp this a little bit. You're quite a good player, and that obviously didn't happen overnight. Doesn't for anyone.
Right.
I'm curious how that aligned with your commentary aspirations. Did they feed off of each other? Did you have to make a decision at some point to focus? How did that work out?
Yeah, here and there, there are definitely tournaments where it's like, I gotta pick one or the other. Like, there's tournaments where, well, it really depends. Say a tournament like Genesis, they'll book me for later on in the bracket where I'm expected to not really make it that far anyway. If I happen to make top 8 at a Genesis, I might drop out, or well, I don't know. I probably just wouldn't. Like a player like me is probably not going to make top 8 at Genesis, but I might make top 64. You know, and at that point, like Big House was a good example. There was a Big House where I was scheduled to do a block with Fendi, and you know, you usually have a backup commentator for those slots that you're not really like you can rely on. So like there was a Big House, like Big House 8 or one of the ones recently where I was still in, and then I had to play at the same time as my top whatever commentary block was starting. So they were like, okay, the backup's going to fill for the first hour, and then, you know, play as long as you're in. And so it's very case by case. You know, the different tournaments will have commentary corners that you'll chat with, and you'll make sure, you know, you'll set expectations. Am I more of a player this tournament? I'm more of a commentator this tournament. But when I was coming up, for sure, I think it fed like the aspirations fed into each other, because I just love the game, and for me, like the part of me that loves talking about the game is like I'm just really into the game's mechanics and kind of what drives player interactions and how, you know, why Melee is such a deep game, right? And so like exploring that as a player is actually a very similar drive to me as exploring it analytically. It just feeds it, and I think a lot of people are like this now. You look at a guy like Squid, who started commentating much more recently, but you can totally tell that he's got that same enjoyment for nerding out over Falco laser interactions or whatever in his gameplay, and then he's down to talk about that stuff, you know, when he's commentating as well, and he's kind of all, yeah, it's the same drive at the end of the day. So yeah, logistically, sometimes you do have to pick and choose, but I think from a, you know, if I think for people like me and Squid, and, you know, I think if we could have it our way, you know, we would be just doing both all the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Sick. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We have some specific questions about that dynamic, so we'll put a pin in that for now. I want to keep on this kind of your storyline, your history of this. So we kind of talked a bit up to around 2016, 2017. Once you were kind of maybe more of a lock for the later top 8s, the bigger tournaments, all of that, did you ever feel the sort of dynamic, let's say, this might seem a little extreme, but like the hungrybox effect, right? He was on top, so to speak, for so long that there wasn't anything to really push for. Was there any of that with where you were? Did you feel like you reached a peak? Was there any sort of slow down of that drive?
Not nearly as extreme as someone like hungrybox, probably, because it's not like you're being ranked or anything like that. It's not like you feel like you have something to really defend or whatever. But like, yeah, I mean, yeah, to a certain degree, I think there definitely was a period, maybe in the mid like 2015, 2016 period, where I didn't feel like I was necessarily innovating on my commentary that much. Well, maybe that's not even true, actually. Maybe that's not even true, because I actually do think there were some really great tournaments me and Bobby commentated in those years. Like Evo 2015, I think we did a really good job. MLG, Anaheim, well, that was 24. Yeah, yeah, kind of, but yeah, whenever I have pangs of that, I try to recenter it on like the game. You know, like I try to remind myself why I like doing it. At the end of the day, if I didn't want to commentate, I would just stop doing it. If I wanted to enter more and stop commentating as much, I would do that, you know, or if I just wanted to. So for me, there's never any pressure. And I mean, you know, it's not like the pay is good enough in Melee commentary that's what keeps you in it, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm just doing it because I want to. And when I feel less passionate about it, I just try to remind myself what got me, you know, excited about it in the first place. And yeah, right now I'm really liking just the state of Melee in general, so it's very easy for me to stay excited about it. Like all of the recent tournaments, everything involving Mango Zane, IBW close behind. Like, yeah, if you're watching Melee in 2020 or 2021, it's a very exciting kind of time just from the gameplay alone.
Yeah.
So,
sick segue. You must have read my mind, because that was, I mean, we are going in chronological order, so we were going to talk about it eventually. But yeah, I mean, the current state of the game, I totally agree. Super exciting from someone like me who's into like making content a bit, playing a bit, commentating a bit. There's a lot to dig into from that perspective. Clearly, the world is in the shitter. Hopefully, we get to come back to IRL events and really shine, you know, get back to some sort of
nice, yeah,
normalcy. But Based on, let's say Slippy coming out with rollback to today, early 2021, what, I guess I'll break it down first into what have you been most proud of in your own development, your own career, and then I guess we could talk a little bit about the community as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I've been focusing on full-time content. Like, I quit my job. I'm not doing software engineering right now. So
yeah, awesome.
Just, I'm trying to, the streaming and also YouTubing. I actually have been putting a lot of thought into kind of the vibe I want my YouTube to have. I really like the style of YouTubing, I guess. I like thinking about when I do a stream, like how it's going to be as evergreen content as opposed to something I'm just doing at one moment.
Sure.
And I actually don't think a lot of Melee people are kind of thinking that way right now. I think the closest person might be Leffen. Out of the streamers who are like, if you look at Leffen's YouTube, like, yeah, Leffen's like Twitch, for example, he doesn't have the sub numbers a guy like Mango has, but his YouTube is very well, like, it's very, the videos feel like they're like Leffen was actually planning on making a video instead of just being stream highlights. So he's kind of the guy that I'm, out of the Melee people, he's kind of the person I'm kind of molding my YouTube after. Yeah, I've just been trying to kind of do that I'm trying to treat that as an art form, I'm trying to get better at that. I'm trying to, because you could be, just like anything else, you can be good at it or bad at it. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, the first step for me was decide if I even liked it. That's what I told Ludwig when I first started out. I told Ludwig, well, my first step is I'm not even trying to get sustainable right now. I'm just trying to decide if I like it or not. If I like it, I'm going to try to get sustainable.
Right.
And
excuse the interruption. She's a monster, so I need to
look at her. But yeah, it's I'm trying to treat it like anything else. I'm trying to get better at it for myself, not for any kind of extrinsic reward, or I'm trying to and I feel like I've gotten to a place where I'm getting a little more comfortable with my style, and it's been a fun new challenge, and I'm kind of pursuing it. And it's cool because, for a long time I was like kind of thinking to myself, for years I was kind of like, man, I wish Melee had more of this.
Right.
And now I'm kind of like, well, I mean, if I don't do it, like, how many other people are? Like, who else? Like, Melee needs content creators. Like, we need a couple people kind of, Melee needs a couple people in its corner. So I'm like, okay, well, if I can try to be one of those people and get some self-fulfillment, out of it as well, then everyone wins, kind of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah. And on that front, like, how long did it take for you to realize, like, okay, this is something you could keep up? Like, this is something that you can keep improving at and make it into a sustainable, solid career?
Probably when I hit like for example, Metagame Weekend was really big for my stream. I was getting a lot of viewership, which made sense because people leave, the Metagame stream would end at 6 p.m. or whatever, and people would have, they'd want somewhere to go. And I was, that was when I first hit like 500, 600 subs, 700 subs. And then I was kind of like, okay, this is like, now I'm actually able to pay my rent with this, like if this keeps up and I can keep this growth going. So it's like very, very recently, actually. Yeah. That was like 2 months ago, right? That was like 2 or 3 months ago. So,
cool.
And then getting monetized on YouTube, which took a long time, by the way. Turns out it takes a really long time to get monetized on YouTube. So yeah, it was the kind of thing for a while. I was like, yeah, I don't even know if this is gonna work. Like, it's, everyone know, like Ludwig, when Ludwig started getting into doing streaming full time, right? Like, he was very purposefully trying to avoid being thought of as a Smash person, because it is hard to make it huge, make it big, even as a Smash person, unless you're already like one of the top people.
Sure.
Like a guy like Mango. So,
yeah.
I want to stick to the Melee vibe. Like, I want to believe in Melee, so to speak. But, yeah, I mean, it's tough and it's a decision I have to make, but it's what I love. So I'm going to keep doing it.
That's awesome, man. You're definitely, kind of repping a lot of the people out there that go back and forth, as to whether this is something worth pursuing with kind of a full heart and kind of realistic expectations, or maybe not. I mean, sometimes it feels like the only time that we're allowed to take a risk is if everything's hedged, everything has a backup plan, everything has like a guarantee or a path. And so obviously content creation as a whole has that level of risk. And then there's only so many people that are doing what you're doing. And it's awesome that it's so far it's seemingly to work out really well. And just want to give you props for that. And obviously hope that it keeps going. And kind of, I want to stay in this space a little bit. This is the real juice for me as a fellow content creator and doing kind of my own thing. Where do you feel like the gaps are in Melee in the atmosphere we're living in? I know what you do is a little more of, you give your perspective, you kind of deep dive on topics, you give that evergreen kind of thing. Other players like IBDW will give like a snippet from a stream, talking to different people. There's different people doing different things. What do you think is maybe not being done at all? What do you think's missing and could kind of be included in the pack?
Like, what do you think's missing in kind of the landscape right now?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
It might be an impossible question because we just haven't seen.
Yeah, if I knew, I would just do it, If I knew, I would just do it. Actually, probably the one thing I do want to do straight up is beginner-oriented content. Like, my thing lately has been like, okay, so there's a lot of new players and Slippy and stuff like that, right? Like a lot of people trying it because it's got way better netcode than Ultimate. A lot of old kids trying it, right?
Yep.
And Slippy tadpoles, they call them the tadpole generation. The latest wave.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so, for me, I always feel like, okay, once you hit your first big combo, I've said this on stream a couple times, but once you do a combo for like 70%, you do dare shine, forward smash with Falco or whatever. I think you're already a smasher at that point. Like you're locked in. Like the game is so addicting. You're gonna play Melee probably for the rest of your life. But getting people to that point is tough. And I think playing a very new game where it's very difficult and you have to just humble yourself and realize there's an execution barrier. Well, not everyone's gonna put in that work and not even knows how. So like for me, and Leffen's doing some. You see it with Leffen and his girlfriend Jenny. Like Garma Kilma, they're doing content. Here's a brand new Melee player. Here's her path. She's entering tournaments. She's practicing on stream. It's funny. It's inspiring.
Right.
It's it's a great series they're doing. So for me, it's the same kind of thing. I want to do more content like that. I want to make new players feel like they at least have a roadmap if they want it. And if we can get the average brand new player to get to the level where they can hit some sick combo or some sick movement or whatever, then they're locked in. They'll be locked in for life. But
yeah. No,
we got to get I think there needs to be more of that. A lot of the tutorial content, I think, in the Melee community right now, if you take a look, 99% of it is for people who already know how to wave dash.
Yeah, especially the stuff that like breaks down the frames of a situation, which for me is like I'll devour that type of stuff. Like the Micro Melee series, when Walt does his breakdowns, the name escapes me of the exact thing he does, but goes frame by frame of like one combo. As an experienced player, I can watch those in succession. I totally understand, like, okay, maybe someone just entering, they're not trying to deep dive into that. One thing I've noticed is that the kind of, I don't know what to exactly call them, like the Gloomshot, the Peng Boys style videos that kind of, which has its niche. I'm happy that it exists in some form. I mean, the monetization might be a little tricky, and sometimes they might get in hot water, but realistically, like a collection of sick combos of the day, those are constantly bringing in new people. I mean, I know a ton of people that are just gamers, that are PC gamers, and they just will watch Melee videos. They're just in the algorithm. They devour the Nun combos, the Moki combos, all of that. Do you think there's a direct pathway from someone getting into the combos to like, oh, maybe this is something I can realistically do? I know you kind of covered it with like, how do we get them in and give them that? But what do you think it is that unlocks that sort of moment, that like eureka moment of this is possible, I can get to this point? Is it just more exposure? Is it showing new players on that path? Is it another Zero to Hero series? Like, what do you think?
Right. I mean, I'm not even that concerned about that because, again, I think that like people who, the people who watch that stuff, like whether or not they think it's like, whether or not they know or seek the realistic path to being able to play like that themselves, like I think at that point they're in, you know, and I'm the most concerned about growing the scene. So like, you know, I don't necessarily, but at the same time, you know, if that's you know, what they want to do, I mean, a lot of it is just like mentality, right? Like a lot of it is just like, I mean, you know, in my day, whenever I would see someone do, like that's what people always say that about like the arcade era of fighting games. Like the cool thing about that era and like the fact that Melee started as a very offline game was like, you know, you would see these players doing these things and you would say, well, shit, I mean, he's right there. He's doing the thing. Like, I can do the thing. Like, what's stopping me from doing the thing that guy's doing? So, I mean, I think some people just innately don't think like that. Like, I think there's people who get too caught up in, like, oh, I'm not that talented. I'm never going to be blah, blah, blah. I got the wrong head start, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I think 90% of it plus is mentality at that point. So.
I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the average. I mean, for me, you know, is always, you know, looking into these little things that you could do in Melee was always with the intent of like, okay, well, I want to be able to do this in tournament, you know.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
at least, you know.
I gotta think about it and and develop my own opinion here. I'm just kind of talking out sometimes, like what I even feel.
So who do you play?
Foxman.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, it's the kind of thing where with Fox is a nice character because I always feel like the more execution based a character is actually in some ways the easier it is to get good with them because you can always work on your execution.
Yeah, and it's that rewarding. I mean, I started off as a Sheik main, and I remember like thinking, okay, I gotta grind. This is how bad it is. It was like I need to go off stage Rising Nair. I need to practice edge guarding spaces with Rising Nair as Sheik. And I was doing it over and over and over and over again. I'm like, this sucks. Like, this is an important tech. This is boring as fuck. So I just hopped over to Fox. I'm like, you know what? Not going to switch mains. Just going to learn how to wave shine. And learning wave shine over like 3 or 4 days. I'm sure you remember your first wave shine as well. That's that moment. And it just kind of...
Yeah, see... So I think it clicks differently for different people. Like, I think Spaceys have that. That's why there's so many Spacey players. I think it is very... Yeah, it's the reason people play musical instruments. Yeah, okay, music sounds good, but like the other thing is like when you play the piano well, it feels good. And, you know, there's this tactile sensation, and it feels good. And I think Fox and Falco and characters like that do have that, where, you know, it just feels good. And it kind of... There's this reward center in our monkey brains that, you know, we see the wave shine happen, and it feels good and sounds good, and we want to do it more.
Yep.
Wow.
And, you know, any Puff mains out there? I'm not trying to give you any propaganda. There might be some Fox propaganda going on, but whatever. Stick to your guns and then switch when you're a year in. Switch to Falco. I don't know. Okay, so content is definitely... I'll try to sneak out of it, but I am curious your opinions on kind of other people getting into it. So one of the biggest barriers for me starting out was I always felt that I couldn't project my own opinions. I couldn't make content unless it was like fully ironic and like a comedy thing until I had developed the skills to back it up. Nowadays it feels like that kind of barrier has gone away. Like you don't necessarily need to be you know, making top 64, making out around 2 pools type of player to have your voice heard. But it's still kind of this murky area. So we'll talk about it in the context of commentary in a bit, but in terms of content, how do you feel someone should go into if they're like, I want to make Melee stuff, I want to make Melee videos or Melee podcasts? Like, what do you think their relationship to their play should be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that it's the kind of thing where I think there's this great big fallacy that's always thrown around. It's the appeal to authority thing. I feel like Melee players are so bad about this, where it's like, you know, Ginger says one thing, and it's like, okay, well, Ginger's really good. We got to, but then Leffen comes in or whatever and disagrees with him, and it's that he's a better player, so he's right.
Sure,
you know, it's whoever is the best player has the last laugh when it comes to who's. But it's like I mean, your favorite top players are wrong about things all the time. You know, I'll give you a great example. Actually, ironic I bring up Leffen. Leffen actually, we both noticed this, but PPMD was commentating a Fox match at LACS, and he said, you know, Fox double shine Falco at the ledge, that's going to lead to a guaranteed kill because the Falco, the momentum from the shine stacks. You get knockback stacking, and it's going to send the Falco further. So that's not really why that happens. The real reason that it leads to a guaranteed gimp is because the double shine helps prevent. It's actually within the 10 frame window for knockback stacking. It actually is just. It just happens to be the case that the double shine helps it so that the Falco doesn't bounce off the ground, so they plummet. They don't bounce and go up. And you know, and I was looking at that and I was like, hey, you know, PP, that's a top. Like literally, he used to be the best. He was like the best player in the world for a second. And like, you know, okay, well, you know, and I'm not saying anything about PP specifically. I'm just saying this is an example of, hey, top players are not always correct. You can be correct and be worse than somebody. Like that happens all the time. It happens to me all the time. You know, people call me out. They say, hey, you said this thing about Ice Climbers or Luigi or some character that I don't know as well. You were wrong. And I'll be like, well, you're right. I'll look into it. Where I'm going with this is I think there's a lot actually of, I do think it's true. I think that a lot of people are too torn up in the Melee community about the fallacy of, you know, whoever's better is correct at the end of the day. That's the person you got to listen to. But like, if you look at, for example, someone like Shy PF, who posts all kinds of really cool Falco tech on her timeline, you know, I don't think she's like a really known Falco player, but like she posts great Twitter threads on little like Falco technology that she discovers, follow-ups off of throws, you know, combo routes, like new combo routes, new ways to use shine and shield pressure and lasers and things like that. And they're very informative threads. And, you know, on what I mean, to give you a classic, yeah, this is another classic example. It was funny because she posted one of these threads. Ginger came in and had some disagreements, and then Leffen actually came in and defended her and said, no, I mean, she's saying this is a true 50-50, and she's backing it up with the data. So what are, you know, and then they kind of got into it, but it was like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you know what you're talking about, and you have something to bring to the table, like, you know, how do I say this? Like, there's an objective truth, right? Like, if you have some new combo you want to, or some new thing that you think is good, if you're correct, you're correct. A lot of the times it just so happens that the better player will kind of know better because of their experience, but that doesn't mean that you can't be, you know, Joe Schmo, but you found some new sick thing and you want to talk about it, or you have some sick content. You know, I think there's all kinds of people in the Melee community that are relatively small time until they found their little calling or their little niche, and they're blowing up because of it. You look at the people who did like the Akania build, right? That's, you know, Uncle Punch. Like, no one really knew who Uncle Punch was, and before he started working on his training mode hacks, which are obviously incredible. So like, you know, I think totally there are all kinds of examples in the Melee community of people who are really bringing their own unique niche to the table. As long as it's good, you know, if it's good, then people will listen and people will pay attention to you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I'm glad that you came out with encouragement. It makes total sense. I mean, I totally agree. Most often, you know, the first things we see are when I discover someone new that's posting cool stuff, it's like because a top player happened to be like commenting underneath it or retweeting it or something. And that's in any scene. That's how clout works. It's unfortunate, but that's like, you clearly have to prove yourself before you're going to have everyone's eyeballs on you. But, you know, no one's saying, oh, right, post a Slippy VOD. Let's see if I believe what you're going to say. I'm glad that dynamic, as we've expanded and as we've kind of grown and matured, it's just more about the thing rather than really the person behind the thing. I think we've gotten a lot better at that. And that kind of brings me into the commentary field. I want to talk, you know, I'm going to pull one of these lightning round questions and make it more of a longer topic, specifically back to the relationship between playing and commentating. How do you feel the relationship should be with someone? Let's say they are a good speaker, they're someone that's naturally good in front of a microphone, or they're comfortable or whatever it may be, that wants to get into commentating Melee because they love the game. What's the right balance of that person's trajectory? Should they have those aspirations of being a player?
Like what should they do kind of thing?
Yeah, like what philosophy would you instill in them?
Yeah, Okay. I totally think you should still be a player. Yeah, I think that it's like, I mean, most of the good commentators have some chops. Like, I think it's just, I think you should, like, there's no reason not to is the thing. Like, I just think it's not even like you have to be a good player. It's just, going back to the logical, like the appeal to authority thing. You don't have to be, it's not like, oh, you have to be a good player to know what you're talking about. It's more that, like, if you love the game, I almost think, one, there's just a very natural alignment there where if you love the game enough to love commentary, which is like, that's going to be the predictor of if you're good at commentaries, do you love doing it? And do you have that love for, what, like, Melee that you're going to bring to the table in your commentary? Well, if you have that, you would probably, it just kind of goes without saying that you probably would love to play as well. That doesn't mean you have to or whatever. It doesn't mean you have to become an amazing player, but I just think there's no reason to, like, until you're at the skill level where, like, you actually have to decide between dropping out of tournaments to commentate or not. Like, there's no reason not to. You might as well. And yeah, I think it will also add a bit of, if you're concerned about this sort of thing, I think it also certainly adds credence, it adds credibility. Like, if you're a good player, it will just be easier to book gigs, right? It'll be like people will pay more attention to you and stuff like that. So I think from a logistical standpoint, it also makes sense. I totally think you should just do both.
Yeah.
I mean, also just like, the way you get into commentary usually is you go to your locals and you commentate them. That's what I did until you get noticed. And then you have enough of a reel that you can send it to apply to a regional or whatever. And then so on and so forth, all the way up. Right. So like to that degree, it's like, I mean, you might as well, right? You got to go commentate something. I know it's all online now, so it's a little different, but point stands. You got to commentate something. You might as well be, you might as well have as much of a stake in it as you're willing to. Otherwise, people are going to notice and they're going to realize you don't actually like it, and they're going to feel like you're not authentic or whatever. And if you really do authentically love the game enough that you want to commentate it, it usually just goes hand in hand. In my opinion, just from what I've seen, and this is specifically talking about like a grassroots scene like Melee. I realize that I think that in other esports and things like that, I do think you have to make that decision earlier. But I mean, hey, even then, when I used to watch like freaking Overwatch League, all my favorite casters and people who work the desk were the best players. So
right, yeah, I definitely think Melee is unique in that because there's no real top-down support. It's all. That's just another way of saying grassroots, but I try to avoid that word. It's used a lot. Basically, it's kind of, you come in and you have to be entrepreneurial in a sense of what you make out of yourself, what you make out of your local scene, and all things like that. I think with commentary, it's a very, it's something on the forefront, because when it comes to like players coming up, it's binary. It's, did you win this set or did you lose this set? That's what makes you, get into the top 8 and get to the next set and get your name out there and all that. It's straight up results. And with TOing, it's almost way in the back of that spectrum of like, nobody sadly knows most of the TOs that are doing all the work to put the tournaments together until they like get the proper accolades and shout outs that they deserve. But commentary is in this weird thing where you could be in your first opportunity at that regional, and for whatever reason, that regional is, the gang in Philadelphia, and then all of a sudden you're commentating the set that is going to go down in Melee history, and you're maybe out of your league, or you get a ton of criticism, or
that happens all the time though. That happens all the time. That's just how it is. I mean, it happened to me.
Right. What in your first tournament in the Northwest, or when was that?
Yeah, no, I think it happens like, okay. I mean, the dark side of all this is like, okay, I mean, because me and Scar had a huge amount of this. Like, people hated our commentary. Like, people they didn't really know us, and they said, we didn't talk about the game enough and all this stuff. I mean, what I want to tell everyone is like, if you do it for long, you will get a lot of flack from shitters in Twitch chat. Well, maybe that's even gotten better. I mean, I kind of got into it in kind of a, 10 years ago, it was a very different scene. I think people are a lot more overwhelmingly supportive and positive now. In my day, you got a lot of flack, people on Reddit talking shit about you, all this stuff. But I mean, you keep doing it. Eventually, it's like the way memes work. You're like annoying until it's like, like people will think you're annoying until they realize like you're kind of here to stay, and then they're kind of like, well, let's if I like this person, and then I'm on the inside, and I'm kind of investing early, So that's kind of the way people look at it, and yeah, you gotta have some thick skin, and yeah, you're gonna be put in those positions. Yeah, me and Bobby did. When we commentated PP at Northwest Manifest, when we commentated freaking Armada versus PP in pools at Evo 2013, and people at that time probably didn't think we were the commentators who should be commentating those sorts of sets. But yeah, I mean, you got to treat it as an opportunity, just like anything else. And even if people don't like it, that's okay. Like people will come around. You just gotta you gotta remember why you're doing it. It's about the art form. It's about the you got to get that intrinsic value out of it. You're not doing it you're doing it for you at the end of the day. So yeah, you got to remember that.
I could definitely attest to that. From the few tournaments I was able to commentate in the recent era, it's always like a bit of a high afterwards. Like you get off and like, you're like, oh shit, I'm actually kind of tired and need to drink a bunch of water, but like the adrenaline's pumping. And if that doesn't hit you like that, if it's exhausting during it, I think that's more of a sign that maybe it's not for you, rather than criticism coming from the outside. I think that's totally spot on. And kind of last question before the lightning round, which I'm selling up way too much, but hey, whatever. Someone in that's trying to come up now specifically, not like in this last couple of years, but straight up quarantine, like no tournaments, IRL, that's trying to get into commentary and get into the scene in that sense. It feels like the opportunities are so much more bare and way less present
right now.
Yeah, right now. So how would you recommend someone like develop the skill set rather than waiting for locals to come back? How would you see someone at least starting on the path to becoming good, not known necessarily, but good
at commentating?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it from the other side. I realize it feels that way to other people, but like I'm in a DM with Brandon Homemade Waffles, who runs Rollback Rumble every week, and a couple other people. He scrambles to find commentators every week. He's like, hey, if anyone's got some free time this Friday, I need commentators for Rollback Rumble. Like there is a need for it. People just aren't looking. I swear to God, because like who are the big melee commentators? Me and Scar, and then Vish and Chillin, okay. Brandon Lovage, Lovage doesn't even commentate everything, right? It's usually Summit and Squid, but like aren't there way fewer prominent commentators than there are prominent players? Like from my side of things, I'm looking at there's a huge need for it. There are still tournaments online. People need, I mean, I just think that like and the thing is, like, if one of us can't make it to a tournament, like, when TOs book commentators for tournaments, like there's a short list of people that they want. It's a short list, and like if one of us can't make it, like that's when me and Scar did. We just got in, we started commentating stuff. Eventually, Prog retired, and then we started getting, so there's this kind of like, it sounds shitty to call it a hierarchy. I mean, that's like the way to think about it, I guess. Is there's kind of like, the people that TOs want to hire first, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there really is a lot of a need for it. From my side of things, I swear to God, like, yeah, it is hard to get in, but it's also like not, because like it just kind of happens overnight. Like you start doing it, and you're like, oh man, like I'm not getting any, I'm not making any progress, like blah blah blah. But then like kind of overnight, like it's almost like becoming a good player, where it won't be this kind of gradual line like this. It's like a step function. You're kind of like, and then you're like, boom. And then all kinds of exposure, and then all of a sudden you use that, and now this is on your resume, and now you're gonna get more tourney gigs and stuff like that. I mean, I really do think that there's a need for it, because like, I mean, I've just seen what it looks like when TOs try to book commentators, and like a lot of the time they're kind of like, well, who the hell do we get? I mean, it's not everyone's free all the time.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
I'm that's so fascinating to me. It's a unique dynamic, I think, within the scene. It's rarely the case where people are scrambling to get another player. It's like, all right, how many of this pool of top 100 can we get for our tournaments? And you kind of hungry hippos it, and then whoever comes. Clearly a different dynamic for the commentators, and especially when it comes to the top 8. Like, you don't want to have an iffy top 8 or people that you don't know, or maybe the worst case scenario of 2 people that are well known but might be just a terrible match. Like the few people that just for whatever reason don't sync up. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges there as well. Kind of selfishly, I want to ask you, like, what is the barrier stopping more people from joining that pool? Is it the skill level of the actual commentators? Like, is it the fact that they're not well known, so you can't rely on them to deliver the finished product? Or my theory is that once you kind of hear the person's voice more often, it becomes that sort of like you mainly become synonymous with the top 6, top 8 commentators' voices. For a while it was Prague. Now it's you and Scar and Brendan, Phil, and that sort of thing. Like, what is it that's stopping that pool from expanding and maybe relieving some of that problem?
I think skill of the commentators is certainly part of it. Like, I think that, like, how do I put this? Like whenever I hear like commentary that I'm like really pleasantly surprised by the commentary, like, lo and behold, that person just ends up being someone who like, I feel like if there were truly great commentators, like, okay, if there were great Melee commentators where they're really bringing something fresh to the table, and I heard them and I was like, damn, this is they're saying some good shit right now, and then they're like not getting gigs or whatever, like, I would be surprised. I just feel like I feel like if you're good at it, like, you know, if you're authentic, if you're knowledgeable, if you're like, you know, if you've got a good vibe that chat, like, you know, that people listening like, I do feel like you want that. They're like, yeah, I get that it's much more subjective than winning a tournament, right? Playing, it's very objective. Like, playing, it's very objective. The better player just wins. Like, the best player wins the tournament, and then the next best player that day gets second and third and so forth. Well, commentary is a lot more subjective. I get that, but at the same time, I do think that there are standards that we can judge commentary by, and I think that by and large, like, good commentators end up sticking around. I've almost never heard an amazing commentator and then I never heard from them again. Like when I'm like, damn, this person's saying some really good shit right now, they usually stick around. And I also think that part of it is just like, I follow this guy. Well, actually, he's a friend of mine at this point. But if you know Visa, VisaCon, he has this great quote that is like, "You can't think your way out of a courage deficit," which is like to say that, like, a lot of the time people overthink this kind of shit, and you just gotta fucking let it rip, right? You gotta just like do things. And like, I think there are a lot of people that they kind of impose these they say that it's like, oh, I don't have the connections, I don't have the money or the time or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way to make it work. And yeah, I think a lot of people are not just in commentary, but just in whatever. Like, I think people are scared to pull the trigger. And I like, straight up, if there was someone who really wanted to get into commentary and they set out and they said, you know, I'm going to seriously, you know, do the work and try to commentate some small tournaments and work my way up, and I'm going to make it known that I'm commentating, and I'm going to reach out and kind of brand myself on Twitter and so on and so forth. Like by the end of the year, I promise you they would be getting at least gigs at, like, you know, regionals, medium-sized tournaments. If it, in the online era, you know, they'd be getting blocks on Rollback Rumble tournaments like that for sure. I think. I just feel like if they were actually like, I don't know. You look at someone like Velparia. Like, Vel is like, she's like the Melee VTuber, right? I don't know. I don't really know her backstory, but I assume she was like, I like VTubing and I like Melee, and like, I'm just gonna like I'm gonna be like a Melee VTuber and just see how that goes. And like, yeah, she's, you know, I mean, she's only got like a couple hundred followers on Twitter right now, but like, she just ran this big tournament that Hacks won, and it was this kind of really positive thing, and yeah, she's just kind of doing her thing. Like, how many people are doing that? How many people are actually identifying a niche and saying, like, I really want to do this thing, but like, I don't know if I should do it, blah blah blah. Sure. Like, I think that's most people. So I don't know. I just think that people you gotta take the step. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that I like letting it rip, just as a kind of overall tone. Just, if you have an idea, just go with it. If it works, it works. Not whatever. You don't have much to lose. And And the kind of cream rises thing, I think, is fairly accurate and pretty optimistic. I mean, talking to some other commentators this week, spoke to Fendi the other day, and he kind of had that approach where he went to like a tryout. He literally went to audition, and they told him like, you don't know shit about the game right now, but you have these certain qualities that, you know, you can't really teach a person. And so when it comes to like anyone else, it's really a matter of, I don't think it's a matter of talent necessarily, but it's a matter of like, you know, develop the skill, develop the voice. Something you've repeated a few times, I'm really glad you did, is like being comfortable with your voice, like being a firm, not putting on another thing, but like having that connection to kind of your identity, your soul in a sense, and allowing yourself to share that through the game. That's how I think of like a good commentator, or the, you know, the ideal of what a commentator is. And you know, there's so much to work off here. I'm just gonna go right into this lightning round. If you're ready, are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so for all of these, we don't have any crazy graphics. We're very low tech, but we're gonna see if we could get like a dirty 30 seconds on most of these questions. If you feel hella inspired, I'm not gonna cap you, but if you could get it out quick, that's gonna be the goal. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
How do you personally deal with criticism, valid or not?
This is lightning? Man, this is like a real question. Yeah. How do I personally deal with it? I have gotten very good over the years. If I do say, I think better than, I think people like me and Scar are 99 percentile, no lie, at taking flack, parsing the shitty, hateful stuff out from the like speck of actual good criticism, and absorbing the good criticism and not letting the flack get to us too hard.
Awesome.
And you have to learn how to do that as a commentator, because people will talk a lot of shit.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, keep it going. If you could pick something else to be known for instead of commentary, what would it be? And that's not just Melee. That's anything.
Chess.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You want it? Okay. I mean, hell yeah. It's a good time.
It's a good game.
It's a good time to be in it, too.
Very exciting game. Yeah. Watch my tournament February 6th and 7th, featuring Mango, Left, and Ludwig.
A plug. Hell yeah. Cool. How much does it matter to set the stage before a set?
It matters a lot. That's why I let Scar do it.
Okay. So just if that's a strength, lean into it. If not,
it matters a lot. Yeah. The whole, I think one of the major things, like one of the North Stars of my commentary is when I watched Brandon Homemade Waffles commentate when I was getting into Melee, I felt like I could feel like I was in the room. His commentary would bring me into the room. And so when I commentate, I want my listeners to feel like they're at the tournament, even though they're not, even though they're at home.
Hell yeah.
And I think that setting the stage is one way to do that. Or one of the things you need to do, rather, to do that, to establish that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Okay, you might have already answered this, but what is a game that you have not commentated but have interest in doing?
Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Oh, yeah? Have you been on the grind with that game?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting.
Okay.
And that's why I haven't commentated it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a short one. It's sweet. Why do you commentate?
I mean, yeah, I think it's just I think Melee's a dope game. I like talking about it. We had Mango on for the Mango Scar and Tophs show, aka Mango and Pals, yesterday. We talked about Melee for like 2 hours, and it's fun. We said we could probably talk about Melee for we could keep going for like 24 hours probably. You know, just keep talking about it. It's just fun to talk.
Hell yeah. Okay. How good do you have to be at playing to be a great commentator? We kind of spoke about this, but
yeah, that's my answer. It's like the wrong. This question mixes up correlation and causation. Does that make sense?
Explain.
Being a good player is correlated with being a good commentator, because usually if you're passionate about commentating, you would be passionate about the game anyway, and it'd be fucking weird if you weren't.
Right.
That's not causation, though. That doesn't mean you need to be one to be the other.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that's really well said.
But I think to me, it is weird when I see someone who seems to love commentating, my initial gut read on people like that is like, why don't you play more? Like, you like this game so much, like, shouldn't you be like, what's going on there? So for me, I'm kind of like curious about that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they don't have to. One doesn't have to mean the other, or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question. You don't have to make this a lightning, but feel free to do so.
Okay.
When do you think commentary shines the most? As in, what is peak commentary?
Peak commentary, you kind of know when it's happening. So like Mango versus Zane at Big House was a great example of this, where it was kind of like, wait a minute, we're actually living a very special moment right now, and like we better do our best work to amplify the moment as much as possible. I think peak commentary can't happen without peak gameplay, first of all, but because it's all about the game at the end of the day. But I think it helps to be able to identify when that's happening, because it's like, like I said, every set and every tournament, every event has its own kind of vibe, and I think peak commentary is when peak melee is happening. So,
man,
and serves to amplify that.
You gave me some answers that I couldn't have picked it out better myself. We're coming up on an hour. I think that's all I have for you. Again,
I hope you liked that.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
This hour flew. I could talk about melee content, the game, and commentary for hours, but for the sake of your time, my time, everyone's time, we'll cap it here. But if you have any parting words, feel free to plug. But I'm sure you're not getting too much traffic from from here outside of what you got.
It's my Toph BBQ with no underscores, my YouTube and my Twitch, and I just all the support. I've been getting a pretty nice